I stood at Grandma's casket watching vultures circle. They wore expensive suits and designer dresses, fake tears, and practiced grief. My father, my aunts and uncles, cousins I'd seen maybe twice in my life. Every single one of them had ignored her for years, some for decades, but here they were, filling the small rural church, weeping loudly, telling stories about a woman they couldn't have picked out of a lineup 6 months ago. And after the service, as we stood by the grave, they started, not with condolences, with questions. "Did she leave a will?" my uncle asked, not even waiting until we'd lowered the casket. "The farmhouse must be worth something," my aunt added, dabbing fake tears. "And all that land? What, 80 acres? My father stood silent, arms crossed, watching me like I was keeping secrets, which I was. Because for the last 5 years of Grandma's life, I was the only one who showed up. The only one who sat with her, fixed her porch, drove her to doctor appointments, listened to her stories. I was the only one who loved her when she had nothing left to give but memories and time. And in those 5 years, Grandma told me things, showed me things, left me things that had nothing to do with money and everything to do with truth. As the pastor droned his final prayer, I touched the envelope in my jacket pocket. Grandma's last letter to me, written 3 days before she died with instructions I was about to follow. "What did she leave you?" my cousin asked, stepping closer to the grave, her eyes sharp. I looked at all of them, these strangers who shared my blood, and smiled. "Everything," I said quietly. "She left me everything. I just didn't tell them what everything meant. They'd find out soon enough." It started 5 years ago with guilt. My wife Sarah had been nagging me for months. "When's the last time you saw your grandmother? When's the last time anyone saw her?" I'd made excuses, busy with work. The ranch needed me. It was a 2-hour drive. But Sarah kept pushing, until shame finally drove me to Grandma's farmhouse on a gray Saturday morning. I hadn't been there in 3 years, maybe 4. The house looked smaller than I remembered, sadder, like it was slowly surrendering to time. The porch sagged, paint peeled. The garden Grandma had kept immaculate was overgrown with weeds. I knocked, feeling like an intruder. When she opened the door, I barely recognized her. She'd always been sturdy, strong, farm woman strong. Now she was thin, frail, her hands trembling as she gripped the doorframe. But her eyes, those sharp blue eyes, still had fire. "James," she said, no surprise in her voice. "Took you long enough." Guilt hit me like a fist. "I'm sorry, Grandma. I should have what? Visited? Called? Remembered I existed?" She wasn't angry, just stating facts. "Come in, I'll make coffee." The house was clean but empty. Photos on the walls of family who never visited. A phone that never rang. A table set for one. She made coffee in silence, her hands shaking as she poured. "How are you?" I asked, the question pathetically inadequate. "Lonely," she said simply. "Old, forgotten." She sat across from me, studying my face. "You're here out of guilt. That's fine. Guilt's better than nothing." I opened my mouth to deny it, but she raised a hand. "Drink your coffee, then tell me why you really came." I couldn't answer, because she was right. But sitting there, seeing her loneliness, something shifted. Guilt became responsibility, and responsibility would become love. I started visiting every weekend. At first it was duty. Fix the porch, mow the lawn, check the pipes. Grandma didn't ask for help, but I gave it anyway, trying to ease the guilt that sat heavy in my chest. She'd sit in her rocking chair on the porch, watching me work, making dry comments about how I held a hammer wrong or mowed in inefficient patterns. "Your grandfather would have done it different," she'd say. "Better and faster." But there was no bite in it. Just loneliness disguised as criticism. Slowly, the work stopped being penance and started being conversation. I'd finish fixing something and she'd offer coffee. We'd sit on that sagging porch, drinking from chipped mugs, and she'd talk, really talk, about growing up during the Depression, marrying young, raising 5 kids on this farm, about the war years when my grandfather was gone and she ran everything alone, about dreams she'd had that got buried under responsibility. "I wanted to be a teacher," she told me one evening, her voice soft with old grief. "But Papa needed help on his farm. Then I married your grandfather. Then the kids came." Dreams don't survive necessity, James. I asked why my father and his siblings never visited. Her face hardened. Because I got old. Because I stopped being useful. Because people love you when you can do something for them. Raise them, feed them, give them money, and forget you exist when you can't. That's not true. Look around. When's the last time any of them called? Your father lives 40 minutes away. 40 minutes. She laughed bitterly. They took everything I had to give, then moved on. Hearing her say it, the hurt wrapped in acceptance, made me furious. I'll talk to them. No. She gripped my hand, surprisingly strong. You can't make people care, James. You can only decide if you will. I decided I would. Around the 2-year mark, Grandma started showing me things. Not just stories, but objects. Treasures hidden in dusty attic boxes and locked desk drawers. Photographs of people I'd never heard of. Letters tied with ribbon. A journal written in her careful hand. I've been thinking, she said one day, pulling a shoebox from her bedroom closet. When I die, and I will die, James, don't look like that. People will come. Your father, the others. They'll pretend to mourn, but they'll really be looking, wondering what I'm worth, what they can take. Grandma, let me finish. She opened the shoebox. Inside were documents, property deeds, bank statements, insurance policies. This farm is paid off, worth maybe $500,000, the land alone. I have savings, not much, but some. And there are things, antiques, heirlooms, jewelry your grandfather gave me. She looked at me intently. They'll want it all, and they'll expect it divided equally, as if they all loved me equally. But they didn't. No, they didn't. She pulled out a weathered leather journal. This is my real treasure, my real story. Things I never told anyone because they never asked. Things about your grandfather, about my life, about secrets this family has kept for generations. My heart started pounding. What kind of secrets? The kind that explain why your father is the way he is, why your aunts are bitter, why this family fell apart. She held the journal to her chest. I'm old, James, tired, but I'm not ready to die with lies intact. I want truth told. I want justice. She handed me the journal. When I'm gone, you'll be executor of my estate. I've already written it in my will. You'll decide who gets what, and you'll decide when to reveal what's in here. I took the journal with trembling hands. What's in here, Grandma? Everything they don't want you to know. I didn't open the journal for 3 months. It sat in my truck's glove compartment, a weight I felt every time I reached for registration or insurance papers. But Grandma never asked if I'd read it. She just kept talking, kept showing me things, kept preparing me. Your grandfather wasn't who everyone thought he was, she said one afternoon, unprompted, staring at his photo on the mantel. A handsome man in army uniform, 1940s, strong jaw and kind eyes. He was better, kinder, braver, but also complicated. She pulled out a box of letters, dozens of them, yellowed with age. These are from the war. He wrote me almost every day. Beautiful letters, full of love and hope and fear. She handed me one. I read words of devotion from a young man to his young wife, beautiful and raw. Then she pulled out another letter, different, newer paper, different handwriting. This is from a woman named Elizabeth. She wrote me in 1953, a year after your father was born. I opened it carefully. The letter thanked Grandfather for saving her life during the war, for being kind when others weren't. Who was she? A woman he saved from a concentration camp? He never talked about it, never claimed to be a hero. But she found me, wrote this letter, wanted me to know. Tears filled Grandma's eyes. Your father found this letter when he was 18. He read it, demanded to know why his father never told him. I explained your grandfather's nightmares, his silence, his pain. Your father said he was weak, couldn't even brag about being a hero. She wiped her eyes. That's when I knew I'd lost him. He saw his father's humility as weakness, saw my love as foolishness. He wanted strength that looked like arrogance. Is that in the journal? That and more. Read it, James. When you're ready. That night, I finally did. The journal started in 1945, right after Grandfather came home from war. Grandma's handwriting was young, hopeful, full of love for a man she'd married at 18 and barely knew. But as years passed, The entries changed, became darker. Not about grandfather. He was always good to her, but about the family, about my father. The entry from 1968 made my hands shake. Robert came home from college today, brought a girl, pretty, educated, clearly for money. He was ashamed of the farm, ashamed of us, told her we were simple people like it was an apology. When she left, I asked why he spoke that way. He said, "Because it's true, Ma. You and Dad are simple. I'm going to be more." I asked, "More than what? More than honest? More than kind?" He said, "More than poor." He doesn't understand. We were never poor. Entry after entry documented my father's growing contempt, his embarrassment, his insistence that Grandma and Grandfather sell the farm, move to the city, stop living like peasants. Then, in 1972, a devastating entry about my father bringing business partners to the farm, parading his parents like museum pieces to show off his humble origins. Later, she'd overheard him say, "Don't worry, I made sure they can't embarrass me in the city. They know their place." Grandfather had cried when they left. The final entries from recent years were worse. Robert called today. First time in 14 months. Needed money for James's college. I gave it. He didn't say thank you, didn't ask how I was, just said, "Wire it to this account," and hung up. I read through tears, shaking with rage. My father had taken money from my education and never told me, never visited her. I nearly called him. Then I saw Grandma's last entry. James is getting everything. Not the money, not the farm, but the truth. That's the real inheritance. Grandma died on a Tuesday morning in October, 3 months after I read her journal. I'd visited the Saturday before. We'd sat on the porch watching leaves turn gold and red, drinking coffee in comfortable silence. "I'm tired, James," she'd said quietly. "Good tired, the kind that comes from a full life. You're not dying yet, Grandma." She smiled. "We'll see." That Tuesday, her neighbor found her in her rocking chair on the porch, coffee cup still in her hand, blanket over her lap, peaceful. The doctor said her heart just stopped. 93 years old. She'd lived long enough. I got the call at work. Drove those 2 hours in a blur, tears streaming the whole way. When I arrived, she was already gone, taken to the funeral home. But the rocking chair was still there, still moving slightly in the wind like she'd just stood up. I sat in it and sobbed. The funeral director handed me an envelope. "She gave me this 6 months ago. Said to give it to you when she passed." Inside was Grandma's handwriting. "James, by now you've read my journal. You know the truth. You're also executor of my estate. My lawyer has all the paperwork. When they come, and they will, remember, you owe them nothing. I owe them nothing. Give them what they deserve. All my love, Grandma." I understood what she wanted, what she'd planned. The funeral was set for Saturday. I called my father to tell him. "I'll be there," he said, no emotion. "Was there a will?" I hung up. Over the next days, I called everyone. Aunts, uncles, cousins. Same questions from everyone. What did she have? Did she leave instructions? What about the farm? No one asked about her, about memories, about who she was, just what she'd left. I told them all, "Come to the funeral. We'll discuss everything after." They'd come, not for Grandma, for what they thought they'd inherit. The funeral was packed. The small rural church overflowed with people, most of whom I'd never seen before. My father and his new wife in the front row, dressed expensively, looking bored. My aunts and uncles scattered throughout, some dabbing eyes with tissues, others checking phones. Cousins I'd met maybe twice, some I'd never met at all. And then there were the real mourners, Grandma's actual friends, the neighbor who'd found her, the people from her church, the woman from the grocery store, the mailman who'd checked on her. These people cried real tears. The pastor gave a beautiful eulogy about a woman of faith, strength, and grace, who'd lived a full life despite loneliness. He talked about her love of gardening, her sharp wit, her kindness to strangers. My father looked at his watch, twice. After the service at the graveside, I stood alone by the casket. My father approached first. "We should talk about the estate, the house, the land. I'm assuming she left everything divided equally among her children?" "No," I said simply. His eyes narrowed. "No? What do you mean, no?" "She left me as executor. I decide distribution." That's ridiculous. I'm her son. You haven't seen her in 8 years, not once. What exactly do you think you're owed? My Aunt Carol pushed forward. We're family. We have rights. Rights? You sent her the same Christmas card every year. Same card, same signature. That's what you think constitutes a relationship? More family members gathered, their fake grief evaporating into naked greed. The farm is worth $500,000, my Uncle Ray said. That's $100,000 each if split 5 ways. Or $300,000 for me if I keep it all, I said coldly. The mask was off. We'll reading tomorrow at her lawyer's office. 10 a.m. Everyone's invited. You'll find out then exactly what she left you. The lawyer's office was small, a converted house in town, wood-paneled walls and old furniture. Mr. Henderson was 70 if he was a day, Grandma's lawyer for 50 years, and he looked at my gathered family with undisguised contempt. Everyone was there, my father front and center with his wife, Aunts Carol and Diane, Uncle Ray, 10 cousins of varying ages, all dressed nicely, faces showing anticipation barely masked as grief. I sat in the back, alone, watching. Mr. Henderson cleared his throat. We're here for the reading of Mrs. Rose Patterson's last will and testament. He opened the document. Legal language followed. Everyone shifted impatiently. Then he got to the substance. To my children, Robert, Carol, Diane, Raymond, and Susan, I leave the following. Everyone leaned forward. To each of you, I leave $1. $1 for every year you forgot I existed. $1 for every promise broken, every visit postponed indefinitely, every phone call you couldn't be bothered to make. Along with this $1, I leave you each a copy of my journal, which documents in detail every slight, every abandonment, every cruelty. I leave you the knowledge that I died knowing exactly who you were, and I leave you the understanding that you taught me a valuable lesson. Family is not blood. Family is who shows up. Silence. Absolute silence. This is insane, my father said. We'll contest. She was completely sound, Mr. Henderson interrupted. I have medical documentation from 3 doctors. You can contest. You'll lose and pay substantial legal fees. What about the farm? Uncle Ray demanded. Mr. Henderson smiled. To my grandson James, who chose love over duty, who showed up when no one else would. To James, I leave everything else. The farm, the house, all savings, all possessions. I leave him the inheritance I always wanted to give. A legacy of love, not obligation. The room erupted. My father lunged toward me. There's one more thing, Mr. Henderson said. Video testimony. He wheeled in a TV. Grandma's face filled the screen. She sat in her living room, frail but fierce. If you're watching this, I'm dead. And if you're upset about my will, good. You should be. Let me explain why you got $1 while James got everything. She folded her hands. Robert, my firstborn, you were embarrassed by me from the time you turned 15. Embarrassed by the farm, by my lack of education, by your father's humility. You took money from me your entire adult life, for college, for business failures, for James's education, and never said thank you. Never visited, never called unless you needed something. You measured my worth in dollars, so I'm leaving you one. My father sat frozen, face white. Carol and Diane, not much better. Christmas cards every year, the same one, signed but not written. You couldn't spare 5 minutes. Couldn't visit. Your mother died alone because you were too busy. My aunts looked at their laps. Raymond, you called twice in the last decade, both times asking for money. Uncle Ray's face was red. James, you came out of guilt at first. I knew that, but you kept coming. Every Saturday for 5 years. You fixed my house, listened to my stories, made me feel human again. You asked about my life, my dreams, my regrets. You saw me as a person, not an obligation or an ATM. That's why you get everything. Not because you're better, but because you chose to love me when I had nothing left to give but time. Tears filled her eyes. To those of you angry about this will, you had decades to change your behavior, decades to visit, to call, to care. You chose not to. Don't be angry at me for responding honestly to your choices. The screen went black. The room stayed silent. Then my father stood. You poisoned her against us. I showed up. I said quietly. That's all. Every week for 5 years. You lived 40 minutes away and came 0 times. My father tried to contest the will. Spent $20,000 on lawyers over 6 months before his attorney told him he had no case. He gave up, bitter and broke. My aunt stopped speaking to me, sent angry letters calling me manipulative. I kept Grandma's journals documenting their decades of neglect. Their accusations meant nothing. The cousins mostly disappeared. Uncle Ray tried to sue, claiming Grandma had promised him money. Mr. Henderson produced documentation showing Ray had borrowed and never repaid over $60,000 from Grandma. Ray dropped the suit. Through it all, I kept the farm. Didn't sell it. Instead, Sarah and I moved there. Our kids, initially resistant, grew to love it. They learned the stories I'd learned, slept in rooms their great-grandfather had built, walked land their ancestors had farmed. I kept her things exactly where she'd left them. Her rocking chair on the porch, her photos on the walls, her garden, which Sarah replanted. Every Saturday, I sit in that chair and drink coffee, just like I did with her. The farm is worth more now, easily $700,000. I get offers monthly, developers wanting subdivisions, investors wanting to flip it. I turn them all down. This land isn't for sale. It's for keeping, for remembering, for honoring a woman who loved me enough to trust me with her truth. My kids asked once why their grandfather never visits. I told them the truth. He made choices that hurt people. Sometimes you can't come back from that. Do you miss him? My daughter asked. I miss who I thought he was, not who he actually is. That's sad. What's sad is he chose this. Your great-grandmother gave everyone chances. They never took them. My son said, I'm glad you visited her. Me too, buddy. Me too. 5 years after Grandma died, I found something I'd missed. Cleaning the attic, I discovered a locked wooden box hidden under floorboards. Inside were letters, dozens of them, from Elizabeth, the woman who'd written Grandma after the war, thanking Grandfather for saving her. Except these letters spanned decades. One every year from 1953 until 2010, just 3 years before Grandma died. 57 letters documenting a friendship I'd never known existed. I sat on the attic floor and read them all. Elizabeth had survived the concentration camp, immigrated to America, became a teacher, fulfilling the dream Grandma had abandoned. She'd married, had children, built a life, and every year she wrote Grandma, sharing her life, her gratitude, her friendship. Grandma had written back. I found carbons of her letters, careful copies in her handwriting. They'd shared everything: dreams, disappointments, children's lives, husbands' deaths. Elizabeth's husband died in 1988, grandfather in 1995. They'd mourned together through letters. The final letter from Elizabeth was dated April 2010. My dear Rose, I'm 91 now and I feel death approaching. Not sadly. I've lived a full, beautiful life, largely because your husband gave me the chance to live it all. I'm writing to say thank you, one final time. Thank you for sharing him with me through your letters. Thank you for understanding. Thank you for 57 years of friendship I never expected but always treasured. I have no family left. My children died before me. Cancer, both of them. But I have lived, Rose. I have taught thousands of children. I have loved and been loved. I have mattered. Because your husband saw me as human when others saw me as nothing. Please tell him, when you see him again, that I remembered, that I lived well, that his kindness rippled through decades. With all my love, Elizabeth. I sat crying in that dusty attic, understanding something profound. Grandma's loneliness wasn't total. She'd had Elizabeth, a friend who valued her. I tracked down Elizabeth's family through her letters, found a niece in Boston, called her. This is going to sound strange, but I'm James Patterson. My grandmother was Rose Patterson. She had a long correspondence with your Aunt Elizabeth. Silence. Then, oh my God, Aunt Elizabeth talked about Rose constantly, especially near the end. She left something for her, for your grandmother. But Rose died before we could send it. What was it? A scholarship fund. Aunt Elizabeth left money to establish a teaching scholarship in Rose and her husband's names for rural students who want to become teachers. It's been sitting in trust waiting for family contact to finalize paperwork. My breath caught. How much? $200,000. Aunt Elizabeth was frugal. invested well, outlived everyone. This was her way of honoring them, a teaching scholarship. Grandma's abandoned dream, funded by the woman grandfather saved. Circle complete, justice in the most unexpected form. I worked with Elizabeth's niece to establish the scholarship officially, named it the Rose and William Patterson Memorial Teaching Scholarship in honor of Elizabeth Brenner. Every year, it sends 2 rural students to college to become teachers. Students like Grandma could have been. We awarded the first scholarships last spring. 2 kids from farm families, first generation to college, both wanting to teach. I presented the awards, told them about Grandma and Elizabeth, about kindness rippling through time. They listened with tears in their eyes, understanding they were part of something bigger than money. They were part of love outlasting death, friendship transcending decades, dreams deferred but not destroyed. That night, I sat on Grandma's porch and talked to her like I used to. Told her about the scholarship, about Elizabeth's final gift, about how her loneliness hadn't been the end of her story, just a chapter. "You were never as alone as I thought," I said. The wind rustled through the trees, and for just a moment I felt her there.